Hello, my name is Keena Bradley, and I'm a student at Chicago State University, currently taking an abnormal psychology class 2155.51 for the spring semester of 2018. It is an online course. This is my journal review presentation, and the journal that I chose to review is Complex Trauma, Disassociation, and the Use of Symbolism in Therapy. So one of the reasons I chose this article is because I have an interest in working with trauma, and I noticed they have a complex trauma category in there focusing on PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I myself am in the military, and so PTSD is something that is really familiar within our unit, for definitely with soldiers who have deployed overseas for long periods of time, and also soldiers who are just in the military and haven't deployed overseas. They've experienced PTSD for a number of different reasons. I am also a deputy sheriff. I work at the Cook County Jail, and I deal with a lot of inmates who have also experienced a variety of different types of traumas. So I was just curious as to what the complex aspect of trauma, what are they speaking of? And the summary of the article, it basically speaks about trauma, childhood trauma, and how therapists have been confronted with different challenges when dealing with childhood trauma. So basically, incorporating symbolism has been a tool that they highly speak of in the article, incorporating symbolism as an additional tool to some of the historic ways and historic therapies previously used, like cognitive behavioral therapy and psychodynamic therapy, just to name a few. One of the questions I had was, in the article, they speak about complex PTSD versus just regular PTSD. So my question was, what is the difference? When speaking of complex PTSD, they are speaking about children who have experienced trauma from the age of birth until the age of 5 years old. And the reason that they're focusing on that age group is because it is believed and said in the article that from the age of 0 to 5, any type of trauma experienced or experiences that you have, period, it actually shapes and develops your personality and who you are. It's basically like the thread that puts you together when being created has to be gently undone and rethreaded with healthy and good things, because it's believed and said in the article that from the ages of 0 to 5, children don't understand that the trauma they've experienced is actually a negative thing, or it's not normal. They perceive it to be normal because it's the only way of life or the only experiences that they've had. Majority of children who have experienced trauma at that age, they know nothing else. So the technique that you would use to address that would be different than addressing trauma with a child, according to the article, and as well as according to the DSM-5, 6 and older. You would address it in a different way because they kind of have an idea of what life is like without the trauma, and the difference between right and wrong, depending on what stage you begin to address it at, what stage in their age group, and the depth of the trauma, depending on case by case scenario. But by age 6, they understand right from wrong. They understand, and this is saying that the trauma happened from 6 on up. So basically, the complex version is dealing with children from the age of 0 to 5 and kind of addressing issues and using symbolism to help put into words what sometimes people are not able to put into words. I found it very interesting. They use a case study and an example of a therapy session where they got a variety of different tangible items, and they asked the patient to go ahead and choose an item that describes the way you're feeling. And they had like a rock, they had a cage, a bird, just different random items. And what that was able to do is able to put into, have the, it was, what it did, excuse me, was giving the patient the ability to decompartmentalize their feelings and what they're actually feeling, and then try to describe why it is you chose that item and what it is that you're trying to say by choosing that item. Symbolism can also be used with colors, smells, sounds, anything really that you can use to express your feelings in a therapy session in conjunction with the traditional methods of therapy to be able to express what you may not be able to express in words. And your job, or my job as a therapist, is to read between the lines, but not to add between the lines. So you really allow the patient to just verbalize and express what they're feeling, and you have to really listen to what's not being said. I think it was a great article. I always knew, we speak in we use a lot of symbols when we speak. We're surrounded by symbols all over, but you never really take the time to think about how symbolism can be used in therapy unless that is your angle or unless you're taught it. So I'm really glad I read this article. There is some criticism when it comes to the complex PTSD versus regular PTSD. Some argue that PTSD is complex on its own and it doesn't need the complex before, because there's such a wide range of PTSD and the scale is so large that, why add something additional to it when it's already, it's enough as it is. And I understand that aspect, but I looked in the DSM-5 as well as the DSM-4, and the category for children 6 or 5 and under up until the age of 6, it was separated, but the criteria was the exact same as it was for 6 and up. And I didn't understand why even differentiate it if it's basically verbatim the same criteria. So I think the fact that they do separate it, it is noted that you would address children who deal with post-traumatic stress disorder and trauma. You would deal with younger children from 0 to 5 a different way. So I support using complex PTSD for that age group and actually putting that in there, because I think it's important to recognize the differences and how you would approach that, as well as using symbolism when dealing with a younger population, 0 to 5, because they're not able to really form their words or express their feelings. So being able to use symbolism for them to express how they feel and why they feel it, I think is an excellent technique and one that I will be using myself. So just to give you a quick overview of the article, again, it's talking about childhood trauma, complex PTSD, disassociation. With the disassociation and the symbolism, that is also when you're dealing with dissociative disorders, symbolism can also be a great way to give someone an idea, a therapist an idea of what it is you're actually feeling and why. You can use an example of a cloud in the sky, that you feel like you're a cloud floating in the sky, and you're just drifting. So that kind of makes you feel, you would take that example as, kind of being not attached to anything and just floating. Maybe you just really have to do your homework and listen to what's not being said. So it was a great article. The course has been awesome, and I'm just really appreciative to get all this knowledge that I'm learning. Thank you.